It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me this morning. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. And over the next hour, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of real estate stuff here. If this is your first time tuning in, I like to take a lot of statistical information, market data from local markets, regional, national markets, and then apply that to the Low Country so that if you're considering buying, selling, or investing in real estate here, then you can take that information, you can apply it to your situation, and we can together create some reasonable expectations for our market and for your goals. So that's what I do with this program. I like to share a lot of my personal experiences as well as somebody that's been in this real estate market for coming up on a decade. I've been in the top 1% of agents in our market since 2009. So if you've listened in the past, you know that I like to share a lot of stories and insight as to what I experience as an agent here in Charleston. A few housekeeping items first. If you'd like to reach out to me, if you're considering buying, selling, investing, you are not yet working with an agent, or you just have a question, you just want some advice, feel free to reach out to me. There's no cost, no obligation. I'm here to help, but I'm also a real estate agent and would appreciate the opportunity to earn your business. I can be reached probably most easily through my website. My website is listingsincharleston.com, or you can call me 843-345-1273. On that website, listingsincharleston.com, we've done some revamping of it. You can take a look at everything we have for sale in the MLS from all real estate companies, not just mine. You can take a look at my listings. We're working on completing everything that I have sold year to date, and of course throughout my career. You can read some testimonials from past clients, and if you're considering selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab. You'll see some information on what I do to market my properties for sale. Obviously, it's not my entire marketing plan, but you can also learn a little bit more about my 59-day home sale guarantee, which very simply states that I will produce an offer on your home in 59 days or less, or I will sell it for half my commission. So listingsincharleston.com is the place to go for more information on that. Let me tell you what I want to talk about this weekend. And this show is it's a little bit different from some of the other shows, and I'll tell you why. I'm actually pre-recording this show right now because this weekend, my wife and I will be going to the hospital to deliver our firstborn child, little Ellie Claire Beatty. So for those parents that are listening, if you remember back to the not necessarily the anxiety, but just the emotions associated with getting ready to go to the hospital, that's kind of what I'm experiencing right now, on top of about 3 gallons of coffee and all that good stuff. So sorry if I kind of bounce around a little bit this weekend in my program, but obviously a very exciting time for my wife and I. We're both thrilled, although the delivery will be a little bit early, but everything should be okay, so no worries there. But that's what I've got going on in my personal life. But as it relates back to what I want to talk about this weekend, I want to talk with you a little bit about my own personal strategy when it comes to investing in real estate. I think for those of you that have listened in the past, you know that I have investment properties. I work with investors currently. I've worked with an investor or two out of Vegas or California or New York that wants to buy as many properties as they can get their hands on. And of course, I've worked with dozens and dozens of investors over the years to buy short sales and foreclosures. So we're going to talk about my investment strategy. We're going to talk about the investment market as a whole. I want to talk a lot about short sales and foreclosures. I really want to focus a good portion of time on that. And then outside of that, of course, just give you some general market updates, provide some insight for you on what I think is going on right now, and I think what's going to happen here as we transition into the fall and, of course, the first part of next year. And then I want to talk about for sale by owners, because that's always kind of a fun topic for me. And then I want to talk about all the properties that have been for sale throughout the spring and summer months that have not sold. I want to give you guys a little bit of insight on what's going on in that market. maybe some things to think about if you're a seller and you've had your home on the market and it hasn't sold. And then we'll talk about a few other kind of smaller topics. So that's what we've got planned for this next hour. Again, if you'd like to reach out to me, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. So let's start first with just the general market update. Let me just kind of tell you what's going on right now. You know, when we look at the recovery that we have seen over the past 18 to 20 months, let's just start at the beginning of 2013. We've seen a fairly drastic increase in sales, and we've seen a fairly drastic increase in price. We've seen a decrease in inventory. And again, if you've listened to my show in the past, then hopefully I've kind of gotten through to you guys that there's something kind of missing here. What's missing is just strong economics that are fueling the real estate recovery. In many areas of our market, we have already recovered. So if we're looking ahead to 2014, 2015, I still expect there to be price gains. I still expect there to be increases in sales. I also expect there to be increases in inventory as permits increase and as new properties get built. But I don't think that we are going to see that increase, that double-digit increase in pricing like we saw in 2013 or like we've seen in the first 6 months or so of 2014. Now, of course, different areas of the Charleston metro have appreciated in value faster than others. Berkeley County and Dorchester County usually tend to lag Charleston County in terms of a recovery because Charleston County has more of a variety of properties. You've got your historic homes, you've got your single-family homes, of course, you've got condos and all different types of locations, beach, waterfront, downtown, so on and so forth. You have the beach market in general. And then it's also where we see a lot of our second homes. It's where we see a lot of investment properties. So Charleston County usually leads the way just from a market stats perspective. They're the ones that usually look good first. Berkeley County and Dorchester County are kind of lagging behind right now. But let's think about this for a quick second. We've got a little over 700,000 people in the Charleston metro area. And in looking through a few different articles, there are a few things that I just want to go through that kind of give you an overall view of what has happened and what is happening. And I'm going to relate this to investors because I want to talk about investors for quite a while on this program. Let's talk first about rent. Rent year to date versus the same time last year has gone up 10%. If you look at 2011 to 2013, in many parts of the Charleston metro area, it was up 10 to sometimes 20%. Unbelievable increases in rent. So many times it's less expensive to own than it is to rent. But there are still tight credit guidelines out there that prevent people, even those with good income, from buying. Perfect example is I have a deal going on right now where the guy makes good money, but the way in which he is paid is so unorthodox that just standard institutional lenders can't really do anything with his income because it's sporadic. It comes in large chunks. Sometimes it's W-2, sometimes it's 1099, sometimes it's paid through his LLC, sometimes it's paid to him directly. It's kind of a mess when you look at it on paper, but the fact of the matter is he makes good money and he should be able to afford the home. So we get under contract with this guy. The lender thinks that, hey, this shouldn't be a problem. We'll be able to work through the issues. Well, we get toward the end of the contract and we find out that he just can't get financing through the bank that he was going through. So now we're exploring other options. He's spoken to multiple banks. They're basically saying the same thing. And now we are left with some creative financing options like going out and getting hard money or going to an investment group. And again, we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But as it relates to back to rent, there are plenty of people out there that want to buy, but we still have these credit requirements that prevent people from getting mortgages. So there's still a large portion of renters out there. And then let me switch gears for a second and talk about just the foreclosures and the amount of people underwater, meaning they owe more than their home is worth, or they might owe what their home is worth, but they can't pay commissions and closing costs to be able to sell it and break even. And I read this article that came out and it said that about 18% of the Charleston metro area is either still underwater or they owe very close to what their home is worth and they just can't pay a commission and the closing costs that they're expected to pay in order to break even. And if we've got 700,000 people and we've got 18% or so that are still underwater, that's 120,000 or so people that are still in some form or fashion underwater. So there's still opportunities for foreclosure purchases. Of course, there are still opportunities for short sales, but I think you'd be surprised at what's actually going on in that market. And so that's what I want to talk about next. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about real estate investment properties. We're going to talk about that short sale and foreclosure market, what you can expect, all that and more. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Again, don't forget to reach out to me if you have any specific questions or if you'd like to work with me, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Again, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. I'll be right back.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. That's lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. Thanks for joining me this morning. And when we left, we were talking about what's going on in the market in general. I kind of gave you guys an idea of what happened last year, what's going to happen for the rest of this year. I even talked a little bit about what I expect to happen next year. And I told you before we left that I wanted to give you some insight as to how I approach investing in real estate. It's something that I do personally, something that my family has done for decades. It's something that I help a lot of people do, because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of, in my opinion at least, incorrect expectations that are set between agents and the investor that can ultimately, of course, not only result in a waste of time, but a fairly large exposure to a market that might not really be there. So one of the questions that I've gotten from many investors is it too late? Is it just too late to consider getting into the investment property market? Have prices already gone up to the point where we're just not going to see that appreciation anymore? What's happening with rent, so on and so forth? So we're going to dive really deep into this segment. Again, if you'd like to reach out to me, if you're considering buying, selling, investing in real estate, I am an agent during the week. I've been in the top 1% of agents since 2009, so feel free to reach out to me. And it doesn't necessarily have to be about talking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate. You could just have a general real estate related question. I'm happy to help in any way, shape, or form. Just feel free to give me a call, 843-345-1273, or probably an easier thing to remember is just to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can read testimonials, you can search the MLS, you can learn more about what it means to work with us as a buyer. And of course, if you're considering selling your home, then I do have that unique guarantee that says that I will sell your home in 59 days or less, or I'll sell it for a 4.5% commission. So contact me for information about that. Again, listingsincharleston.com. So when we took a break, we were talking about just the market in general. And I think I kind of got your wheels turning a little bit in the idea of, is it too late to get into the real estate investment world? I think the simple answer to that is no, but let me explain. It's actually, the answer should be kind of, but let me explain. Yes, we have had nice increases in appreciation over the past few years. If you bought in 2009, 10, 11, when you got a really good deal and there were a ton of foreclosures out there and you could just get a really good deal on property, then yeah, you've seen some nice appreciation. And if you chose to buy and then rent it out, then you've seen both appreciation, probably double-digit appreciation, just in terms of the value of your home, but you should have experienced at least a 10%, probably closer to 15 or 20% increase in rent. So it just means that you locked in your purchase price at that point in time with the expectation that it was going to earn X amount of dollars in net rental income. And one of the great things about real estate is that over time, as prices increase and as rents escalate, the investment just looks a little bit better. If you bought this year, one of the things that I have mentioned time and time again, and it seems like I've been talking about this for close to a year now, is that at some point in time, our market will slow down. We cannot sustain this pace of price appreciation where we have, 13% increase in pricing in Charleston County in 2013. And this year we're at 8-9% in many markets. At some point, it's going to return to normalcy. It will be kind of that average 3 to 5%. That's a normal level of appreciation for a market. And in many cases, we're there in some areas. If we look at Mount Pleasant as an example, prices have gone haywire. Do I expect them to continue to go up at the rate by which they've increased over the past 18 months? No, I don't. I don't think that we are going to sustain that level of increased pricing over the long haul. I still think they're going to go up because we have a serious issue with just a general lack of supply in that market. But again, it goes back to we have to have more than just a lack of supply in order to sustain, a market recovery and then market growth. We have to have those economics that allow us to charge more for the house, or we have to have the economics that promote the ability to pay for a house, like wage growth, more jobs, more increase in GDP, which fuels everything, so on and so forth. We just need better economics, and we need more people to have down payment, savings, and the ability to get a mortgage so that we can increase that pool of available buyers. And then we also need builders to step up, put more product out there so we can fix the supply issue. And once we do all that, we will continue to increase in price, and we will get to the point where at some point in the future, people that purchased at the height of the market before the crash, pricing will get back close to those numbers. As of right now, it looks as though about 18% of the Charleston metro area is still underwater in their mortgage, meaning they either owe more than their home is worth, or they owe very close to what the property is worth. They might even have a few $1,000s in equity, but they don't have the ability to pay a commission and pay for the closing costs to sell their home in order to break even. And again, we've got about 720,000 people in the Charleston metro area, I believe. And according to this survey I read, about 18% of all mortgages are in some form or fashion underwater. So how does that translate to opportunities for investors to purchase property? Well, first of all, I don't think that it's too late to get into the investment game. Frankly, I think that it's always a good time to be a real estate investor. It just depends on the situation. Obviously, we can't change the market. All we can do is react to it. So if we find ourselves in a market where pricing has increased fairly dramatically over the past 18 months, and that's starting to slow down, that doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't invest. It just means that we need to be cognizant of that statistic, of that trend in the market, and not expect that when we buy something that it's going to go up 20, 30% in the next 2 years or something like that. Of course, it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. So let's translate this into the short sale and foreclosure market for a second here. Again, we're talking about real estate investment properties. I'm going to tell you my strategy for investing in real estate. If you'd like to reach out to me, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, if you want to have a one-on-one discussion with me about this topic. Let's talk about the short sale and foreclosure market. I did some numbers a little earlier in the week. Right now, we have about 6,200 homes for sale, residential properties. I want you to guess, before I tell you the answer, on how many short sales you think we have. What percentage would you think? You're probably wrong. When I look at the total inventory for short sales, we have close to 200 properties available for sale that are short sales. That means that our percentage of total inventory that's a short sale right now is about 3%. 3. If I look at foreclosures, we have 160 properties available for sale out of 6,200. That's 2.6% of our inventory. So we have less than 6% of all properties on the market give or take a percentage or two, because I didn't, go through each individual listing, of course, but we've got around 6% of our total inventory as foreclosures and short sales. That's not a lot. So where do we go to find those opportunities? Well, we also look at estate sales. We look at individual situations where sellers have to sell. Just because they're, a regular resale doesn't mean they're in some form of distress and have to sell now. There are always going to be fire sale situations out there. You just have to be working with an agent or have the resources available to you to find those deals. When I look at everything under contract right now, we have about 5% of our total inventory as being under contract, representing short sales, and 1.5% of what we have under contract being foreclosures. So we've got almost 7% of our inventory that's under contract is short sales and foreclosures. So bottom line is there's just not a ton of options out there in that particular market. If you want to compete in that market, you need a few things. Number one, you need to be first. Secondly, you need to work with an agent that understands that market and can give you a very clear idea of what that property is worth. And then number three, you need to work with an agent, of course, that understands that process, understands what to ask for in the contract, what not to ask for in a contract, so that we can position you as best as possible to be that offer that's accepted. There's a lot more that goes into that, but let me just tell you first about my investment strategy. It's going to depend on whether I'm buying and holding a property to rent it out or I'm flipping a property. And I'm going to give you these percentages for you to think about, and I'm going to take a break, and we're going to come back. I'm going to talk to you about it a little bit more before we switch gears. But if I buy a rental property, I want at least, at a minimum, a 10% return on my investment. If I'm flipping a property, I want a minimum, bare minimum, of 20% return on my investment. So I want you to think about where else you can go right now to get those kind of returns on your cash. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Again, reach out to me, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. I'll be right back.
Visit Brian Beatty's website at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
The Big Talker, WTMA.
You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back, Charleston. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty. Thanks for sticking with me if you've been with me for the first 30 minutes of this program. What we're talking about this weekend, for the most part, are real estate investment properties. It's something that I have focused on ever since I got into real estate. It's something that I kind of grew up with as well. My family owns real estate investment properties. I personally own real estate investment properties, and I've helped a lot of people build their wealth through real estate ownership or through just real estate flipping. And so I want to kind of finish that discussion before moving on. Again, if you have any questions, concerns, you want to just talk about something in general, or if you're considering buying, selling, or investing in real estate, feel free to reach out to me. I am a real estate agent. In fact, I've been in the top 1% of agents in our market since 2009 and would like an opportunity to earn your business if you're not currently working with anybody. I can be reached at 843-345-1273, or you can go to my website, probably easier to remember, listingsincharleston.com. And on that site, you can take a look at every property for sale listed by every company in Charleston. You can, of course, take a look at my listings, look at everything that I've sold, which we are continuously updating. And then if you're considering selling your property, click on that Sell Your Home tab. I have a 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% that I'd be happy to discuss details with you about. Again, listingsincharleston.com is the website for that. Let me finish this discussion, though, on real estate investment properties. You know, there was an article that came out that I touched on a little earlier in the year from Bloomberg, and it said that the nation's millionaires were going to fuel their capital into real estate as their number one choice for investments. And not just investments in total, but they view real estate as an alternative class or an alternative asset class. So it's the number one alternative asset class investment that millionaires can make. And the reason they feel that way is because, the S&P index had a great year in 2013. I think they had 30% growth. They thought that interest rates were going to remain low, and they anticipated pricing to continue to go up along with an increase in rents and then better economics as a whole, which of course happened. And if you bought at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, then you've seen that appreciation and you've seen how our market continues to change for the better. But wanted to talk about the two different types of investments, and then I wanted to touch on my investment strategy for those two types of investments. Before I left, I told you that if I buy a rental property, and I just use cash because it's the easiest way to talk about return, but if I invest $100,000 into a property, I want that property to earn me net after everything, taxes, insurance, maintenance, property management fees, so on and so forth, $10,000, 10%. If I flip a property, then by the time I buy it and renovate it and pay the closing costs to buy it, potentially pay the mortgage to hold it, and then I sell it, I pay the closing costs and the commissions to sell it. After all of that is said and done, and if that's too much for you guys to follow, I have a very simple Excel spreadsheet that you can just put in a purchase price and anticipated repairs. It'll funnel everything else for you, and it'll tell you what the return on investment is going to be. It can also tell you if you go to a property, and here, this is a really cool example. Let me kind of just switch off to this really quickly, and I'll come back. But this spreadsheet that I have is very interesting in that if you know how much it's going to cost to renovate something, and you know what the value of that property is going to be once you renovate it, and you know what your expected return on investment should be, then all of those things, when input into the program, will tell you the maximum amount that you should pay for that property in order to achieve that return, which is the way that you should approach real estate investments. This is not an emotional decision. This is numbers. This is business. So again, going back to buying and renting, if I find something that I think is in a good area where there's going to be a legitimate demand for rent, then I, at a minimum, want a 10% return on that investment. I am also going to take into my calculations the fact that it will be held with a property management company, because quite frankly, I don't have the time to get phone calls from tenants that says, hey, my toilet's clogged. Can you come over and unclog my toilet? You need to, if you're listening and you want to get into the real estate market as an investor, you need to decide what your time is worth and whether you want to be the handyman, Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It. Call me whenever there's a problem. I'm going to manage the property myself. Or if you're going to be a little bit more like me, which is kind of a hands-off of, hey, this is a great opportunity. It's in an area that I want to invest in. Rents are good. I'm getting it for a good purchase price. But I don't want to be bothered with the day-to-day of it. I just want to sit back and collect my checks and potentially write some checks when I need to if there's some maintenance-related things I have to address. So my goal, 10%, that's the same goal that I have for investors when we work together. Now, they may be more seasoned than I am. I'm not here to say that, I am super intergalactic real estate agent of the year when it comes to real estate investment properties. So if you're an investor, you're seasoned, you're listening, and you've got some tips and tricks, or if you just want to have a discussion, I can relay to you what I'm seeing in the market. And then if you're also in the market, I'd love to compare notes. Reach out to me, 843-345-1273, or visit my website, listingsincharleston.com, and contact me through there. But let's switch for a second and let's talk about flipping property. Flipping property, obviously a much more risky proposition. Not only do you have to buy it, you have to buy it and in most cases renovate it. You have to hold on to it while you're renovating it. And then you have to make sure that you're working with an agent that has given you a realistic resale price once all this stuff is said and done. And I've worked with a lot of investors over the years that partnered up with an agent that they didn't necessarily feed them information that was not ethical. It's just that they did the best they could, but they didn't understand how to track a market and accurately guess what that property would be worth at some point in the future once they've done all those renovations. That really is a very, very, very important thing if you're listening and you're considering selling or flipping, folks, is that you've got to know what the property is going to be worth when it's all said and done, because that's how you project your equity. That's how you project how much money you're going to make on all this. So simple math. If I buy a property for $100,000 and I put $20,000 into it and I think I can sell it for $170,000, that's $50,000 in gross income that I have on the line. But of course, I have to take into consideration how long is it going to take me to sell? Because that might affect, well, it does affect your gross income because you have to pay to hold on to the property. But if I get that number wrong and it turns out to be $149,900, then maybe that investment becomes far less attractive to the investor because you're the ones that are putting the money out there. The real estate agent's just supposed to guide you through the process. So you got to make sure that you're working with somebody that understands all the facets associated with it, because there's nothing worse than saying, wow, this is a home run. This is going to earn me 35% return on my investment. And then at the end of the day, it earns you 10%. Well, you can't go broke making a profit. But if you've spent a ton of time, you've had to act as the general contractor because your contractors aren't doing their job, so on and so forth. The bottom line is it can be a huge waste of time if you're not partnered with the right person or if you have incorrect expectations about our market. So that's where a seasoned real estate agent comes into play. They are a player on the team in addition to an attorney and an accountant and a lender if you're planning on borrowing the money. You've got to create kind of that dream team if you want to get into that world, because it's competitive in Charleston and because there just aren't as many opportunities as there were to make good money in it. So you've really got to be on your A game. So I'm going to switch from that topic. When I come back, we're going to talk about for sale by owners, and we're going to also talk about all those properties that have been on the market for the spring and summer months this year that haven't sold. Why haven't they sold? We're going to talk about that coming up next on the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Again, don't forget to reach out to me if you have a question, comment, concern, or you want to work together. 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. I'm going to take a break, and I'll be right back for the final segment of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 8 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Thanks again for joining me this morning. This is our last little segment here where we're going to talk about one of the things that I'm really passionate about in this industry, and that's for sale by owners and expired and withdrawn listings. I've really kind of created a fairly large business out of working with these types of sellers, which is kind of funny because usually for sale by owners or expired and withdrawn listings, people that have had their home on the market and it just didn't sell are usually a little bit more challenging to work with because they've had some sort of bad experience with a real estate agent. And so one of the things that I enjoy, quite frankly, about this business is the ability to approach these folks and say, you know, I'm a little bit different from most real estate agents. If you'll just give me a little bit of time, let me explain to you what I do, what I've done, my track record, and see if there might be an opportunity for us to work together and to help you ultimately sell your house. And I'm going to start with for sale by owners first, because for sale by owners can sometimes be a very special group of people in that they really just, they don't want to work with a real estate agent. They don't think they need a real estate agent. They're all gung-ho about doing it themselves. And don't get me wrong, sometimes they get it right, and good for them. But more often than not, they unfortunately don't. In fact, 88% of all real estate transactions are agent-assisted. So there are very few transactions where for sale by owners actually find the buyer themselves and have a meeting of the minds without the use of a real estate agent. And then you also have to understand that other portion of that statistic are all the deed transfers for divorces or family that purchase property or whatever the case might be. But let's start with for sale by owners first. I do know that again, 88% of all sales are agents that represent their clients, whether it be a buyer or a seller. I also know that half of sellers that closed on their property in 2013 admitting to dropping their price at least once. And if we go to the top 3 things that for sale by owners had challenges with in order to ultimately sell their property, those 3 things were, number 1, paperwork. Figuring out how to structure a contract or fill out something properly so that they don't get burned. And it happens all the time. And frankly, it happens a lot between real estate agents. I can't even tell you the number of times where I've seen a real estate agent produce an offer on a home that I have listed and they check the wrong box, and I'm certainly not going to correct it for them because I represent my client, and we ultimately kind of win financially because of that agent's mistake. And is that ethical? It really doesn't matter. The agent sent me the contract. They filled it out. We are responding to their offer. It doesn't matter if that agent meant to check this box or that box. The fact of the matter is they didn't, and it's included in the offer. And I really don't have any sympathy for real estate agents that don't educate themselves on how to properly fill out a contract and protect the client that they represent. I'm not going to get on a tangent about that because I'm here to talk about for sale by owners, but I do want to help people understand that it is beneficial to at least speak with the real estate agent for a few reasons. Number 1, we talked about paperwork being the number 1 frustration among for sale by owners. Well, it doesn't cost you anything if you're out there and you're listening and you want to sell your home by yourself to call me and say, hey, what contracts do I need? Can you send them to me, please? I'm happy to do that. I do that to for sale by owners all the time. If you go on these websites like forsalebyowner.com, they're going to charge you for those. You're going to spend $150 on contracts. And of course, you're going to pay to market your property on their site. And you're going to have to pay to put it on the MLS. And then you're going to have to pay for a yard sign and pay for anything else that you want to do to market the property. And that was the number 2 issue with for sale by owners was finding the buyer. And then, of course, number 3 was finding the right price. All 3 things that are kind of the basics when working with a real estate agent. Interestingly, in 2013, for sale by owners sold their homes on average for $184,000. And the statistic reads, this is how it reads, whether or not it's 100% accurate, I don't know. I didn't create the statistic. But they say that for sale by owners, when they sell a home, it's sold for $184,000. But if it's an agent-assisted sale, it sells for $230,000. Pretty interesting statistic when you consider the fact that the average commission is 6%. So 6% of $230,000, when you remove that from that sale, it still comes out to be way more than $184,000. And another thing that for sale by owners forget is that the majority of buyers out there are already represented by buyer agents, and those buyer agents expect to be compensated by the seller. That's the way commission works here in our area. So for sale by owners, if you're listening, if you have your property on the market and you're not offering a commission to a buyer agent, you might want to consider it, because if you don't, a buyer agent likely isn't going to contact you at all about your property. And if they do contact you about it and they learn that you're not offering a commission, then that means that they have to go to their buyer to say, hey, well, you pay my commission. And the buyer likely isn't going to be okay with that unless they're getting such a good deal on your house that it makes sense to pay a 3% commission to a buyer agent. So the whole point is, don't open yourself up to that possibility to begin with. Hire an agent that's going to pay for all the marketing. Hire an agent that understands how to set the right price. Hire an agent that can represent you in the best way possible so that you don't get taken advantage of when it comes time to write a contract and go through the process of selling your house. But again, we see it all the time. For sale by owners are, for the most part, fairly stubborn, really don't want anything to do with real estate agents. They want to keep as much money as possible. Understandable. And it's also understandable that they don't necessarily want to talk to real estate agents. There are a ton of real estate agents in our market that say, hey, I've got a buyer for your house. Can I come over and take a look at it? And then the seller says, oh, yeah, sure. Well, absolutely. And then it turns out that agent doesn't have a buyer. It's just a foot in the door technique so that they can meet you. They can walk through it. They can say, okay, well, I don't know if the buyer's going to be interested in this one, but here's my marketing information if you ever need to work with a real estate agent. My approach is very straightforward. If I see a for sale by owner and I think I can help them, I'm going to reach out to them and say, hey, my name's Brian Beatty, blah, blah, blah. If you're considering hiring a top real estate agent, please give me a call. Here are my marketing materials. Happy to work with you. Much more straightforward approach than, oh, hey, I've got a buyer, or my team might have buyers for your home. It's funny. I was talking with a for sale by owner that I listed and sold in just a few days. And he said that he was getting a call from this one particular agent that just would not stop calling. It was a 2 to 3 time a day type situation. And they were saying, well, we've got buyers for your home. And the seller said, well, how many buyers do you have? And he said, well, we have thousands of buyers. We have a huge database of buyers. And so, of course, the seller's like, you know what? Just if you had a buyer for my home, you should have just told me rather than kind of creating this spiel just to get in the house and to try and list my property. If you want to list it, tell me you want to list it. If you have a buyer, bring the buyer. Let's kind of cut to the chase here. And I think for sale by owners get taken advantage of. So that's why I enjoy working in that section of our market, because my approach is very simple. I'm here to help you if you want the help. If your goal is to maximize the sale of your home by not including a real estate agent and not paying a commission, that's fine. Just make sure that you've taken the steps and you've educated yourself in such a way that you don't get taken advantage of by a buyer or by a buyer agent. Talk with an attorney about the contract. They're happy to speak with you most times, especially if you're going to hire that closing attorney to represent you at closing. Most shouldn't mind answering some generic questions about that contract for you. So for sale by owners, it's a market that I've worked a lot in. It's a property or a market that I've sold a lot of properties in. If that's something that you're experiencing, or if you've had your home on the market with another agent for an extended period of time and it just hasn't sold and now it's off the market and you're considering going for sale by owner, or you're just trying to figure out what to do next, feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to walk through my marketing plan with you, see if there might be something that I do differently that might create a different result. The other thing that I'm going to say, probably the last thing that I'm going to say, because I'm running out of time here, is that I would also take a look at your own property. Is it staged correctly? Is it in good condition? Have you neglected repairs? And then most importantly, when was the last time you took a look at the market? Most people have a conversation about price when the agreements are signed and you list your home with a real estate agent, but then you don't really have that conversation again. So I think it's incredibly important for sellers that are listening to make sure that you stay up to date with changes in the market, because it affects your home. It affects buyers, and we need to make sure that we are responding to those changes so that we can create a favorable outcome, which is the sale of your home. So if you would like information on your property, you want to know what's going on in your neighborhood, feel free to give me a call. I'm happy to set you up with a search so that each time a new property hits the market or something sells in your neighborhood, you get an email about it. It's very simple for me to set up. So feel free to give me a call about that, 843-345-1273, or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. I am out of time. Thank you all so much for listening. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.